Okay, looks like it did work. All right, I think we're live. Cool. Let me share my screen here. I'm gonna hide controls, so if anybody else does join and there are questions, feel free to shout them out. Okay. All right. Well, hello, everybody. Thanks for joining this month's episode 5 of Nirmata Office Hours for Kyverno. This is where you get a chance to talk with us, the primary maintainers of Kyverno. We're from the company Nirmata, the creators of Kyverno. Every month, we bring you a new episode where we discuss some aspect of Kyverno. This is like an open door office policy, but we also have a set agenda. So we're live streaming to YouTube now. You can watch the recording later on. Each month we feature a new topic or sometimes 2 topics, like is the case for today. And that topic or those topics this month are, we're going to talk about the updates since Kyverno 1.10. Last episode, we talked about 1.10 and the features that are in there. So go and check that out if you haven't done so. This month, we'll talk about the update since 1.10. So we've had a recent patch release that has some important fixes and changes in it. So we want to let you know about those. And we also are going to talk about contributing to Kyverno. A lot of people still ask us, hey, this is a super cool project, but there's a lot of aspects to it. What can I do? What should I do? Things like that. So in this office hours, we'll talk about those 2 things. As mentioned, this is really an open door office policy that happens to have a presentation associated with it, just so that we use the time. So anybody who happens to join and wants to ask a question or discuss something, feel free to stop me. I don't anticipate in taking all the time. And the other Nirmata maintainers will, I'm sure, step in and tell me to shut up if there is a good question that comes in. Okay, so agenda pretty straightforward. We'll talk about 1.10 updates, and then we'll also talk about how to contribute to Kyverno, the various options and how to go about doing that. So Kyverno 1.10 updates. We have released the first patch, so 1.10.1 to Kyverno 1.10. A lot of fixes in this and updates, so I'll go through some of these here. First one, the major one is, if you were waiting to upgrade or migrate to 1.10 as a user of previous versions of Kyverno, and you weren't able to do so because you use generate rules that use the clone type. So there are 2 types of generate rules. There's the clone type and there's the data type. We asked you to hold off on upgrading to 1.10 if you use the clone type, because we found a couple issues that might have been a problem for some folks. So in the interest of making sure that operations weren't disrupted, we wanted you to hold off and in upgrading to 1.10. Now we fixed those issues, so you're free and clear to upgrade to 1.10 with this first patch. So definitely check out the release notes. And even if you weren't necessarily impacted by this, if you're coming to 1.10 for the first time, very important to read the release notes. Down at the bottom is the link to the release notes for 1.10.1, which in turn links you to the release notes for 1.10.0. So highly recommended, strongly recommended that you check out both, not just the 1.10.1, but go and look at the 1.10.0 release notes, because that's the bulk of them. So anyhow, if you're waiting to upgrade to 1.10.1, now is your chance. We've resolved that issue, so you're good to go with generate rules of any type. The theme for this release was really fixing issues that cropped up in the 1.10.0 release. And since, as those of you may know, but maybe a lot of you don't know, in 1.10, one of the big initiatives that we undertook was to decompose Kyverno into multiple controllers, which allows for better performance, independent scale, and even turning off controllers if you don't want them. Well, that necessitated an all new Helm chart. And anytime that there's a major refactoring involved, and in this case, we had 2, or really probably 3 or 4 when you factor in all of the controllers. There's some things that didn't quite make it as well as we wanted to. So we cleaned up all those issues in the Helm chart and also in the app. Release notes has all of those. It won't go and boil the ocean and go into each of those, but this patch was about fixing any of the 1.10.0 issues in both of the locations, Helm chart and app. So lots of them out there. Some of them, a couple of them were issues prior to 1.10.0 that we wanted to squeeze in. Some other important things in 1.10.1 to call out. There is a new ability to assign custom labels to policy reports. So one of the issues that we heard about was policy reports. You might want to add custom labels to them for other purposes, like scraping with other tools and doing some other filtering on them, but they were getting overwritten the next time that Kyverno reconciled those policy reports. We fixed that in 1.10.1. So if you needed to assign custom labels, you can do so now, and those labels will remain. So that's it's a new feature, I suppose, but it's really an improvement upon an existing one. So those of you that are using tools like Policy Reporter, you can see those labels there, and even Nirmata's own Nirmata Policy Manager for Kyverno, you should be able to see the labels there as well. Second new thing here is a flag called Enable Deferred Loading. So for those that may not have read the release notes for 1.10.0, one of the major improvements that were made, which is more of an under the hood thing, but actually has quite a large impact, is this lazy or deferred variable loading system. So now in Kyverno 1.10, rather than resolving all of the context variables up front, Kyverno will resolve those on an as needed basis. And that also works for the whole short circuiting. So if a policy is short circuited in things like preconditions, then we won't attempt to fetch those context variables. We had some implementation problems with that. This was rather complex and difficult to get right. So we had to make some tweaks here. Although this is enabled by default, if you for some reason ran into an issue or just simply didn't want the deferred loading system, which we think that is probably good to leave on by default, you can use this flag to disable that. And in fact, if you look at the admission controller, you'll see this flag is present with the value of true. It's coming to the documentation soon. You can set this to false and you can turn off that deferred loading system. Another slight change that we made, this is in regards to some internal validations that we did when accepting a policy. When we moved to 1.10, we in the attempt to provide some better guardrails on generate rules, we limited the types of rules that we would accept so that we wouldn't create a perpetual loop. And that would be in cases where you're matching on the same kind as you're generating. What we learned was there are actually a few valid use cases that we learned out there in the wild. And it turns out we didn't actually need this check. This was a duplicate check because we're already aware of the service account that's responsible for creating these generate rules. So anyway, net, if you were having problems creating a policy that maybe worked in previous versions in which you were matching on the same kind as what you were generating, you can now create those in 1.10.1 and they will work just fine. So those are the main points to mention on the patch release. There's the link to the release notes. Please go give those a read. And as I mentioned at the beginning, if you're watching this or if you're attending live and you're coming to 1.10 via 1.10.1, please go read the release notes for 1.10.0 first, and then look at the release notes for 1.10.1. They're extensive release notes. They're breaking changes. And you can also go and pull the recording for last month's episode in which I think it was last month's episode when we talked about 1.10.0. So give all those resources a read and look through and check this out for yourself in a test or dev cluster. That's it For the patch release, any of the other maintainers have anything to add on this, or any other comments or color that they want to add to this before going on to contributing? Okay. All right. So contributing to Kyverno, we get asked this a lot. I personally got this question probably half a dozen times at KubeCon last year, before, during, and after presentations. And even though we think that we have a pretty good guide on it, and I'll bring that up here, we thought it would be a good idea to just talk through it and show some slides, and of course, anybody who wants to ask questions. So it turns out that there's a whole lot of things that you can contribute to, and it's not all just code. So those that maybe are new to open source contribution, new to Kyverno, maybe both perhaps, are often under the wrong impression that contributing to an open source project can only be done if you're a programmer, and that's simply not so. So these are some of the things that you can contribute. What are the things that you contribute? Well, obviously, code being the number one thing. Kyverno is written in Golang, so we always love contributions to the code, but there are other repos that are portions of the Kyverno organization other than Kyverno itself. There's Policy Reporter, there is the new playground, there's the documentation, there are other things. So code can come via any of those things. The second thing are sample policies. You can write or contribute sample policies that you might currently be using. We actually have a policy library that's the largest of any policy engine for Kubernetes. It's almost 300 policies. Quite a lot of those, and it grows all the time, come from user contributions. That is a perfectly valid and very appreciated contribution. Those sample policies help other users out that might be using similar tools as you, or have the same use case that's not present on the policy library. So sample policies are a valid contribution. Documentation, we have documentation in a number of different ways, from the formal website that's rendered on kyverno.io to developer docs. So any documentation, even if it's as small as, hey, I found a broken link, I want to correct a misspelling, I want to make an improvement, all of those things, those are all documentation contributions that don't have anything to do with code or sample policies. Answering questions, providing assistance or advice in a number of different ways. These are all also valuable contributions. Using and sharing open source software is more than just fingers on the keyboard when it comes to making changes directly to any of the repos that we have as part of the Kyverno organization. Sometimes it's just simply answering questions for other folks, and I'll point out what some of those venues are, but we have things like Slack, we have contributor meetings, and there are obviously tons of other venues that are out there: Twitter, LinkedIn, Reddit, Stack Overflow, I'm sure dozens of others, that if you're a user of one of those communities and you see a question pop up, you can provide some assistance. You can give users your advice if you're currently using Kyverno, or you can attempt to answer questions. All of these are contributions that fall outside of the organization, but still assist in going to further the project. So don't forget about those. And sharing your experiences, whether this is in person, in some of those web-based venues that I mentioned, simply telling other people about, hey, this is what I'm doing with Kyverno. These are the pitfalls that I ran into. FYI, if you're doing similar things, you might want to do X, Y, and Z. Those are super valuable contributions to make as well. And they may not even be documented in any shape or form, but sharing your experiences goes a long way to contributing to the project, because you're taking the flag, as it were, and bringing the goodness of Kyverno to other people that are out there. So do share your experiences, answer questions if you can. Those are all valid. And affirming your adoption. If you are a Kyverno user and are able to state that you are a public Kyverno adopter, we have an adoptions form. And I have links to all of these things just by stating very simply and very quickly, hey, we use Kyverno and this is what we're doing with it. That goes a long way to assisting other folks so that they have the confidence to know that, hey, there are lots of other folks that are using Kyverno quite successfully. And if you wanted to add a little snippet about how you're using it and why, you can definitely do that. Affirming adoption is contribution. So as you can see, there's lots more here than just contributing code. Any or all of these are valid contributions. We love all of them. We're glad to help you with them. So the next question that we get is, all right, now I know what I can do. Well, where are the possible locations that I can make these contributions? So obviously, first and foremost, being GitHub, there are a number of repos that are part of the Kyverno organization. The most popular one, as you would probably imagine, is the Kyverno repo under the Kyverno organization. This is where all the code lives for the admission controller, the CLI, and a number of other components. But keep in mind that in addition to code, we also have discussions that we frequently have that come in from community members, and there are developer docs that are there as well. So, thinking back to what type of contributions you can make, there are several that you can make just in the Kyverno repo itself. The Kyverno/website repo, as the name may suggest, this holds the entire Kyverno.io website. So there's lots of avenue for improvement when it comes to the documentation. And by the way, the policy library, which is the third repo there in the list, is actually rendered and displayed on the website. So two different ways that you can access policies. One, you can go direct to the source, which is Kyverno/policies. And we also provide a convenient web front end on the website. You can make contributions in both of those. Speaking of the policy library, so I talked about making policy contributions. If you did want to make such a contribution, it does need to go to Kyverno/policies and not Kyverno/website. We have contributor guides that are specific to both of those, actually all of those in each of these repos. So if you had already decided that you wanted to make a contribution to one of those repos, you can just go directly there and look at the contributors guide, and it'll tell you everything that you need to know about what's there and how you can get started. Kyverno has a sub-project called Policy Reporter, and Policy Reporter is a super popular project that's also written in Go. You can make a contribution there. I believe the documentation is also stored there. So Policy Reporter, if that's a tool that you're very passionate about, lots of good stuff that you can do there. And then the Playground, this is probably the newest member of the Kyverno repo family. For those that might not be aware, there is now a really cool web front end that allows you to play with Kyverno policies without having to install anything whatsoever. You can test policies that are either pre-built samples, you can provide your own, you can tweak the Kyverno configuration. You can do all of that in a web front end, as well as deploy it on your own premises with a binary that's provided. So the Playground is its own sub-project, and you can make contributions there if any of the previous repos didn't pique your interest. So just from a GitHub perspective, there's a lot that can be done, but that's not nearly all of the locations where you can contribute. Slack, we have two channels, one on the Kubernetes workspace, another on the CNCF workspace. The Kubernetes workspace channel is the most populous. I think we probably have around 2,100 members or so, give or take some. And I think about 2,300 between both of them. So Kubernetes workspace is the most active. But Slack is a great place to have discussions and provide that help on users that are coming there, whether it's for support, whether it's for advice, recommendations. That's a great place to get started. And even if you were shy about actively answering questions or providing that advice, it's a great place to just be in read-only mode, to listen and read what other folks are doing. That can help you with your own use cases, your own adoption of Kyverno, and also give you the ability to later on, if you wanted to contribute there, you have some context around what types of things people are running into. It's quite insightful on how people are using the project. So definitely check those out and join them if you haven't already. Zoom, we're broadcasting on YouTube live right now from Zoom. But on Zoom, we have, in addition to the monthly Nirmata office hours for Kyverno, we have a weekly contributors meeting. And Zoom is a great place where you can interact with us in these two areas. So if you wanted to talk about contributions that you wanted to make, or maybe have a PR or something like that already in flight, the weekly contributors meeting is a great place to do that. Obviously, here we're talking to you on the Nirmata office hours for Kyverno. You can join this Zoom meeting live by registering, and there's links for all of this stuff coming up. Even if it's just to say hi, you can certainly join this or camp out on YouTube if you'd rather do that. And so from the other category, like I mentioned, answering questions and providing advice, Reddit, Stack Overflow, YouTube, you name it, people are out there discussing Kyverno. So if you happen to come across a question, all of these other venues are valid contributions. So you don't have to just stick to GitHub or Slack or Zoom. All sorts of places out there where you have an opportunity to help those that may need some help or just want some advice on using Kyverno. So those are all the locations, and there are probably more. I may be leaving some out. So any of the other maintainers jump in if there's something that I'm just leaving out. The final thing is, well, how can we actually contribute? Well, you can just be an individual contributor. Talked about the ways that you can contribute and the venues for that, but it's perfectly fine to be an individual contributor and just make some minor contributions. Spelling errors, fixing broken links, these are all great things to get started with. If you wanted to climb the ladder from there, you can join the Kyverno organization officially, and we have a couple paths that are open to you, one of which is a code owner. So if you've made a number of individual contributions, you can apply to be a code owner, in which you can take more active part in shaping the Kyverno project itself. And you can obviously take that to the max and become a maintainer. And we're always interested in onboarding other maintainers to help us grow the project. The only way that this project works successfully is if maintainers work together, bringing their different views, sharing their different use cases. So this is what keeps a project healthy. We have a number of maintainers that are on the Kyverno project, more than just the Nirmata organization, and would love to grow that even more. So if you wanted to get started in the path to become a maintainer, it starts with an individual contributor, goes through code owner, and then finally a maintainer. So we'd love to talk with you and help you about that if that's something that interests you. Answering issues and discussions in Slack threads. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but this is how you can contribute. You can answer issues that we have that are in any of the Kyverno repos. So GitHub issues are a great way to make those contributions. Commenting on PRs. You don't need to be a member of the organization to do anything to any of these. You can just be all you need is a GitHub account. You can go through these issues and search for some maybe that have impacted you in the past and help other folks. And we regularly see this happen, which is great. Discussions. So GitHub also has discussions, and we have those enabled for several of the repos, and folks actively participate there. So check out the discussions and see if there's anything there that you can help out with. Obviously, Slack is probably the most active, and a number of us participate there. So going and checking out those Slack threads. And by the way, these aren't necessarily just the ones that have to be in the Kyverno channel. There are a number of other channels that are in each of these workspaces, and Kyverno commonly comes up in many of them. So if you happen to see something come up there that somebody asks, about Kyverno in some way, feel free to jump in and help them out. And there are many others that are in the same line of answering issues and sharing your feedback. Participating in meetings. So this is Nirmata office hours for Kyverno, as you know, and as I mentioned, we have the weekly contributors. But any other meetings that you might have, very often there are these local meetups. We had one here not too long ago. You can start your own meeting that if you're a user of one of these enthusiast groups, participate in a meeting, join a meeting, whether it's on Zoom or YouTube or whether it's an in-person meetup, participating in these and share your experiences. This is a valuable contribution, and we love going to these meetings and seeing other folks that come. It's sort of like a birds of a feather type thing. So participate in those if none of these other things piqued your interest. Publishing blogs, presentations, and videos. These can all be things that you do on your own on whatever platform that you have. I have my own blog. We have several other folks that participate in presentations and videos. So these are all ways that you can make contributions as well. And we love reading those blog posts. They seem to be amping up in number. It's difficult for us to keep track of all of the cool blog posts that we see out there, but if you've written one, tell us about it. Come and tweet us or come to the Slack channel. We love reading those blogs. It's awesome to see how people are using it, and we like to share those things and get the word out there. And also, if you'd like to raise a PR and add your own blog to the website, we have a running list of blogs that are out there. So keep that in mind. Obviously, pull requests. This is the heart of contributing to any of the assets that are on GitHub. As mentioned, this is not just code, but also documentation and policies. Send us a PR. We have a fairly mature set of guidance and also templates for PRs. We really want to try and make this as easy as possible. Of course, there's always work to be done in this area. So if you have sent one in the past, or maybe you have one active now, and you haven't found this to be a particularly easy process, or there's some improvements that we can make, tell us about those things. We really want to make this as easy and as frictionless as possible. But that's the PRs for GitHub, and add yourself as an adopter. Like I mentioned, if all you do is want to say, hey, we're using Kyverno and that's it, totally fine. Got some links. And I think the next slide here, and these are publicly available, so you'll be able to access these. We have a Google form. If you'd rather not send a PR, you don't know how to send a PR, you can fill out a Google form and sign up as an adopter, and we'll add you ourselves to the repo. If you are comfortable in stating that you're a public Kyverno adopter and want to send a PR, certainly do that. So lots of ways that you can do this. And finally, some links here. So there's a contribution guide on the Kyverno/Kyverno repo, which is kind of a launching point to other areas on how to make further contributions. As I mentioned, each of these repos have an individual contributing guide, so you can read those for any repo specific directives. Signing up to become a Kyverno adopter, which as you can see, a lot of folks have signed up out there already. This actually really helps us. Kyverno is going to be applying for graduation. As those of you may know, we are currently an incubating project. We have an eye towards graduation. We're starting that process now. We're going to formally be applying for graduation. Signing up as a Kyverno adopter helps tremendously. Just inform other folks that the project is stable and valuable enough for you to adopt it. So two mechanisms that you can use. One, like I mentioned, one is the Google form. The other one is if you want to send a PR directly to adopters. Love to see adopters be publicly listed there. And for more information on contributing and getting started with the community, kyverno.io/community. Got a lot of links to some of the meetings that we have, how to become a contributor, how to climb that ladder all the way up to maintainer status. And I think that is it. Any other maintainers or any other folks out there want to raise their hand or anything I left out? That's all I had. So if nothing else, then let me check.
Chip, do you want to bring up the adopters and some of the other links just to quickly scroll through them? And
Sure. Let's go to the contribution guide. All right, so this is the main contributing guide on the Kyverno repo. So table of contents that you can go and check out how you want to contribute here. Lots of ways to engage with us and talk to the maintainers and the community. A lot of this is kind of repeat from what I mentioned, but reporting issues, fixing and improving documentation, and submitting those PRs. There's instructions down here on how you can submit a PR and some of the things that we look for in the PR template. So this is all covered in the contributing guide. And if you want to look at the release process, we have this documented there on the website. So that is the contributing guide.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. So obviously you can contribute or to Kyverno via PRs to fix issues and docs and links and et cetera, et cetera. But we also appreciate if you can share your story or use case with Kyverno, like you're deploying Kyverno with Argo CD on different infrastructure like AKS, EKS, OpenShift. We'd love to hear your story. Either you have deployed Kyverno successfully on those infrastructures, or you're currently facing any sort of issues and come to us, to our community Slack channel, and we're there to help. Because recently I found there are 2 or 3 users came to us and just asking, hey, am I running EKS? And seems like, I can deploy Kyverno, but there's some unexpected behavior happening, like Kubernetes keep updating some of the resource that managed by itself, and like the AKS or the Argo CD is trying to override that or sync whatever to the original status. So those are the things that are really helpful for us. And we've also built this like the tips or the notes for the platform teams to deploy Kyverno and manage Kyverno on different infrastructures.
Yep. And by the way, the adopters form, well, this isn't the form, this is the markdown file. This is a great place to share your success story. We've got a column here called success story, and you can see some of the organizations that have publicly declared themselves adopters. Would love to see yours here. And put that story in here, or if you didn't want to share a story like Shuting mentioned, come and tell us about it in Slack. So that is the adopters form, or the adopters page. And then let me flip over and show the form. So if you wanted to sign up as a Kyverno adopter and you didn't want to go through the PR process, very easy Google form that you have here. We want to try and make it easy for you to contribute in multiple ways, not just PRs or being an adopter, but really anything. And then lastly, the community page on the website. So the community page has a number of different links from GitHub to the Slack channels, so convenient links for those. We have links to the community meeting, and we also have a Kyverno Google group that you can join. Getting in touch with us. There's the Kyverno Slack channel, and we also have a mailing list. I think that's the Google group that I mentioned. Links to the contributing guide, how to join as an adopter, and then the project governance that I mentioned about climbing that ladder. So details on what the project roles are, roles and responsibilities, and how you become each of those roles. And that's all I can think of.
This is great.
Yeah, one quick question I had for, I think, some of the other maintainers, because I haven't had a chance to try this myself. So in addition, of course, to the user experience, we're also trying to always improve the developer experience for folks who are new to Kyverno or trying out Kyverno. And I think there was a recent contribution by Ved, who's now also an LFX mentee with the Kyverno project. And he added the dev container, some updates to that to Kyverno, right? And I haven't tried it out myself because I guess I'm just used to old habits of how to, build and test Kyverno. But I'm curious if anybody else has tried out or if you've seen a demo of this and what, how it improves that initial developer experience.
Yeah, I personally have not tried it out. I've been curious to try it out. I just haven't done anything with dev containers. I've done some reading on them. They seem pretty cool. It's on my list of things to check out, but I would love to know if anyone out there has tried that out, and what the experience is, if that's a preferable experience to how they used to develop, and obviously if it works well and if there's anything missing. So any of those out there that might be seeing this live or catch the recording and use dev containers, maybe you can come and teach us a little bit about dev containers if
Right.
things work fine, but there are some, optimizations or improvements we can make. Would love to hear about your experiences there.
Yeah,
And I
I'm
just
also
added the
interested.
link to chat on that. Something that I think Ved had updated.
Yeah, I've loved to see a demo on that as well. Last time when I tried that, it seems like currently we only support the Ubuntu or Linux machines. So for Mac users, that might not be an option for now, but would still love to see how that works.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, maybe we can invite Ved to either the contributors meeting or one of these sessions and get a quick demo. And if this is becoming a popular way for developers to quickly spin up a dev environment, we can invest more in it. So let us know if this is of interest.
All right. Anything else to go over here? Anybody else want to bring anything else up? All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining. Hope this was useful. We will catch you next month. Topic TBD. Maybe we'll do something around these dev containers. Maybe we'll look at something else. Stay tuned to the Nirmata office hours for Kyverno GitHub repo, which is where we will post the next agenda. And hope to see you all at some point in time in the community. All right, take care.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.